Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Well, Heidi, we've got a really pressing question today from Brian, and it's really interesting because we've had a lot of people talk about this, and it's the idea of no will and in-law problems. Brian says, my dad died and didn't leave a will. My stepmother of only 2 years is getting almost everything. My wife says life is short and I should forget it. What are your thoughts? Okay, so this is a problem. No will, and the person's only been married for a couple of years, and his dad dies. Well, first of all, Brian, I want to say that I'm sorry to hear about the death of your dad, because these wills and estates problems sometimes become overriding with the grief and loss, and they just really confound the issue.
They tear families apart. I know a family that no longer speaks because of this exact situation.
Mm-hmm. So your dad, there are a couple of issues here. Your dad left without a will. I mean, I know you're angry with your stepmother now, feeling that she's getting the whole estate. How do you feel about your dad? Gosh, it's got to be a really full mixed emotion, losing him and then feeling that anger that there wasn't a correct distribution of money. Right, Heidi?
The fact that he didn't leave a will has made things really complicated. Mm-hmm. And like you said, now he's left everything to his wife of 2 years and not his children. And I guess my question is, how much money are we talking here? I mean, I don't mean to make it all about money, but there's a big difference between, say, 100,000 and 100 million. Mm-hmm. I know I'm being exaggerating, but I'm exaggerating for the point here. So I don't know what we're talking about. I don't know what kind of money we're talking about. I mean, Brian is a younger guy, and he probably has children, I imagine. I would think the best thing to do would be to split the money always. But I don't know what his stepmother's like. I don't know if she's someone that is generous and would split the money, or does she want it all for herself? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and again, it depends on how much money it is, Brian. I kind of am suspicious, Heidi, that because his wife says life is short and she thinks he should forget it, I'm assuming it's not a lot of money, because you can easily go into, say, $100,000 going to court over this. And by the way, you can go over to court in most states. Every state has their own laws, and you would have to go to a lawyer and talk about what your state, how they deal with it. Your dad we don't know, he may have had some Alzheimer's, or we have no idea how he died. And if he meant to leave you the money, I mean, you can make a case in court, obviously, for getting some of this money. But I'm wondering, with your wife saying life is short, because I find that it is often the spouse who it is not their family member who wants you to get, go ahead and get the money or whatever, because they're not in the grief space quite as much as you are. So I would wonder, what is going on here. But you need to look at that, and you need to look at the relationship with your wife. I mean, she's seeing maybe you're taking a toll on yourself right now. She may be worried about you. Don't you think, Heidi?
Well, yes, and also the relationship with his stepmother. It sounds like it could be over. I mean, this relationship might come to an end if he fights her. I don't know anything about her. Maybe she was an amazing woman, and maybe she was a gold digger. Mm-hmm. I don't know. So, I mean, he has to also weigh that bring that into consideration. Does he want to stay in a relationship with his stepmother, because this could end it?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and her kids or other family members. So we don't know, but one of the things I suggest that you do, Brian, is sit down and do a pro and con list.
Mm-hmm. I agree with Mom, because I can see both sides of this. Mm-hmm. And it's really tricky. I can see why he'd want to fight it and why he wouldn't want to. Mm-hmm. Benefits and detriments of both sides.
Yeah, people really get strange about things. And if we were talking to Brian, uh, I would guess some of the problems that I've seen too are what kinds of things did his dad leave? Were at the house besides money? Was he able to get those possessions that he wanted that reminded him of his dad, or did his stepmother take over everything? It's hard to know. Is it possessions as well as money?
Right. And assets, etc. And,
Mhm.
I have a friend that when her mom died, her dad remarried. He was only married a couple of years and he died. He left everything to his wife. And the one of the major problems was her daughter, who is brilliant, was really looking at very top Ivy League types of schools. And when the father died and he gave everything to his wife, all the college fund that was saved for this grandchild was gone, was left to the new wife. And so this child ended up having to go to a school that was, it was less expensive. And basically her dream of a top school was gone because she no longer had a college fund.
hmm So that there are ripples throughout the family.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not just one person who's impacted by these kinds of things. Well, I think it's important, Brian, that you again respect your own feelings. You need to stop and look at, is there ego involved here? Is it sometimes it can be not a lot of money and you are involved with, this shouldn't happen this way. It shouldn't, there should be more fairness in the world. Are you looking at that kind of thing? Or is it actually enough that you would really want to go after it? Because as I say, lawyer fees, as you know, the clock starts running and you can run through a lot of money and a lot of stress on you.
Yeah. And he might not get the results he wants, even after he follows that money with the lawyers.
Well, another thing is to try to approach a family member that can be a mediator between you and your mother-in-law before you do anything.
Mm-hmm.
If you are thinking about doing something and taking legal action or whatever, you might want to talk to her with a family member that is good at grief and loss, and somebody she likes and somebody you like, or maybe a minister, or maybe you'll decide to ask her to go into counseling with you or whatever. Find someone who can talk to you about it. I wouldn't rush to a legal situation.
The other thing is, I don't know what Brian's relationship was like with his stepmother before his father died.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was already strained, because if it was already difficult, this makes it more difficult. Does she have children? Maybe the children can help him.
Well, we had a family member who, actually my husband's stepmother, who somehow changed the will. After she died, the money was supposed to go to the family, and instead of that, it went to her family.
Wow.
And it was a total surprise. But what happened was her children decided that they would give the money to the back, that they didn't feel like it went to the right place. So there is some, relationships and some justice if you don't jump, right to anger. But of course, your father really didn't leave her the money exactly. When you don't have a will, it goes to the surviving spouse in many states.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, so you are able to make a case. This isn't a new problem. It's been around a lot, and you have to look at your own state and all that kind of thing. So again, I say to you, I think that you ought to sit down and do the pros and cons and try to talk to your wife about the pros and cons, and maybe have her make a list of the pros and cons, and where you work on it together and talk it out. But I think you also need to look at your relationship with your dad, and your grief and loss, and what this means to you. And are you hurt? Do you feel hurt that he didn't leave you, do a will or whatever?
Or angry.
Pardon? Or angry, yeah, right. And dealing with anger is something, and looking at forgiveness. Those are all places that you might want to think about going. But just some practical things. Your dad has died recently. Make sure you're drinking water. Make sure you go for walks. Share your loss with other people, what it means to you. Maybe find a men's group Get in touch with your local hospice or hospital and ask if there's a men's group. So many men do not go to grief groups, and it can be so beneficial to deal with this and talk it over. Talk it, use this as an opportunity to open up and talk things over and decide whether it's really about the money or is it about other issues.
Yeah.
So it's important to talk, don't you think, Heidi?
Oh, absolutely. It's definitely important to talk and to be open about how he's feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And talk a little bit about gratitude, Heidi, because I think that's one place that can really help people who've had a loss.
I love the idea of gratitude, but it might be very difficult right now to be in that space because right now he's dealing with a concrete issue of losing out on some of his inheritance that he feels justly owed to him. And maybe it is. But in the long run, being grateful for what we do have is really important. Instead of looking at what you're losing by not getting this money, look at all that you have in your life. And that can help us because what we look at grows. Mm-hmm. And looking at what we have and being thankful for what we have is really important.
Mm-hmm. And it sounds like, Brian, you've got a wife that cares and is concerned about you. So that might be one piece of gratitude there. Well, Brian, thank you for this question. It's a really great question, and I hope that we will have helped you out with your issues about wills and estates. And we want to tell other people, if they're listening to or watching this show, if you want to email us at Open to Hope with your question, we'd be happy to take it on. And Heidi and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours till you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.